Hi everyone, and welcome to the lecture on perception. So I'll get right into it. So far, we've been looking at the Mars model over the first few sessions that we had. And in today's session, we're just moving on to a different part of the Mars model. So keeping in mind, for those of you who would recall, in the previous weeks, we were expanding on the Mars model, what Mars meant, and how that impacts on individual behavior, because this is really the conceptual map that we have for the first half of the course, where we look at what predicts individual behavior. Remember, that's the whole point of OB, right? Where we're looking at, at least in the first half of the course, how can we better predict, explain, and improve individual behavior, and then we move on to group behavior later on. So just to repeat that, all right? Last week, we went into personality and values. So we sort of went to the big 5 dimensions, Schwarz's model of values, and how that impacts upon Mars, which can impact upon individual behavior, or how personality and values could directly impact individual behavior. All right. This week's class, I really want to get into perception and how perception can influence Mars and individual behavior. So for perception, and I want you to keep in mind where it is in the conceptual model, okay? So for perception, we're first going to look at, well, I really have 3 main objectives. And you'll see here we have 2 persons, right? I assume that the muscular person is you, right? And that is this person here posing, very muscular, working out hard, because I know a lot of you work out after the first day of class, right? This is self-concept and how you perceive yourself. So that's why I put a big question mark in your head. Yeah, you all have big heads, as you can see here. I put a question mark on your head because you're trying to figure out who you are, right? And that's your self-concept. So that's the first objective, where I'm going to define self-concept, and of course, how you perceive yourself can impact upon certain things like your motivation, your performance, task performance, and that's why perception of oneself is important to understand and manage at work, right? The second objective would be perceiving others, and here you see you here looking at somebody else. In this case, I believe it's a lady, right, posing, and you're trying to interpret that person, interpret what that person is like. So when you reach perceiving others, I'll just define perception as a whole, what person perception is all about, that process of person perception. And that will take us on to the final objective, where you're not seeing it here as yet. We get into perceptual biases. And this, of course, has serious implications for us at work, because some of these biases can affect, again, our motivation, as you'll see, right? But other things as well, as when we get to it, you'll see an impact upon individual behavior as well. So how we manage these biases is going to be important, but first we have to be aware of them. That's usually the first step, okay? So self-concept. For self-concept, we are going to zero in on, right? Let's go right into it. Self-concept and individual self-beliefs and self-evaluations. And the question there is, who am I, right? Who am I? How do I feel about myself? But really, who am I? And this is a good example. I put a picture here where the guy tells his dog, I don't feel good about myself today. Who can I ridicule in order to enhance my self-concept? And it's funny because it's actually true to an extent, right? That's what people do when we talk about self-enhancement and even self-verification. It really ties into some of what we will see next, all right? So keep in mind, it's who am I? So for self, let me just get the slide. Right. So this is essentially what I want to explain for self-concept, with 3 C's and 4 selves. This framework helps us to understand how we perceive ourselves. And I'm going to start with the 3 C's. But to explain the 3 C's, I'm going to try something a bit creative. I want to, even with this very bad cold that I have right now, and you can probably hear it, I will still want to try something a bit creative to explain self-concept, because it is self-concept. It is about who you are. So I'll try that. I'll pause the video here as just the introduction. And once I explain the 3 C's via that video, we'll come back to get into the 4 selves. All right, so I'll stop the recording for now.